They had gone to investigate a cult called the People's Temple, and they were killed by members of that cult.
I'm going to tell you, Christine, without me, life has no meaning.
He's done because he has destroyed everything I've lived for.
It is part of the tragic story that even to now is not over.
Jim Jones. Most have heard the name, but few truly understand how dark and twisted he really was. But how did one man convince so many people to end it all? Jones grew up in a small town of Indiana. As a boy, he became fascinated with the church, and after he graduated in 1950, he entered a small ministry. During his time there, he became well respected by the people and was seen as a charismatic guy.
Some people see a great deal of God in my body. They see Christ in me, a hope of glory.
But something that's important for this story is the fact that Jones was bullied as a child. He is referred to as trash and really started to hold a grudge against his bullies. After a few years at the church, Jones decided that he wanted to form his own church, and thus the People's Temple was born.
People's Temple truly had the potential to be something big and powerful and great. And yet, for whatever reason, Jim took the other road.
After a few years at the church, the members really began to take a liking for Jones, referring to him as the prophet. And it wasn't long before this popularity got in Jones's head. You see, Jones still held a grudge against his bullies, and this led him to become fascinated with the idea of power. He wanted to make sure that he could control everyone around him, no matter how much manipulation he needed. And he succeeded in doing so. After a few years, everyone at Jones' church really looked up to him as the prophet. And so, when allegations leaked of Jones using the church's money in corrupt ways, his followers refused to believe it. After a while, Jones became paranoid that he would lose all of his power if the government tried to intervene. So, he convinced over 900 people to follow him to South America to start Jonestown. Jonestown was a remote settlement established by the People's Temple. He advertised it as the perfect life.
You know, people would be dancing or singing. There'd be music in different cottages. But when Jones was present, it was very, very dark. It was almost like a dark cloud.
But when they got there, things started to seem off. Jones' desire for power grew even larger. And when anyone threatened his power, he took whatever means necessary to keep it. Threatened some of his followers with death and beatings. But despite the manipulation, his followers seemed completely oblivious. They were just as loyal, and sometimes even more so. You see, this is where the story gets interesting. These people that followed Jones, these were people in need. People that had real issues back at home and were looking for someone to help them. This is why Jones was seen as a savior. But this wasn't the case for everyone at Jonestown. There were a few people who saw the threat of danger looming over Jonestown, and they managed to escape in the middle of the night through the thick South American jungle. But unfortunately, this wasn't the fate for everybody. After a while, the American people got very suspicious of this remote settlement. And after a few people from Jonestown started calling in for help, NBC sent a camera crew down to Jonestown to document what was happening and try and get proof for the American government. When they got there, everything seemed normal. They were able to document much of everyday life in Jonestown. But after a few days, things started to seem unusual. Jim Jones didn't seem like the man he said he was. And after a while, They decided to leave with what they had gotten. But before they could leave, tragedy had struck. As they made their way to their plane, Jim Jones ordered some of his followers to murder the crew. Only one person was able to escape the tragedy. After this had happened, a dark, dark atmosphere settled over Jonestown. Jones became increasingly paranoid that the American government would come to kill them all. So, he made one final speech to his followers.
I with respect die with a degree of dignity. Lay down your life with dignity. Don't lay down with tears and agony.
Hurry, hurry, my children, hurry. All I say does not fall into the hands of the enemy. Hurry, my children. Hurry.
And just like that, hundreds of kids, parents, sisters, brothers, husbands, mothers died. Jim Jones had convinced the people to drink poison. He told them that what the Americans would do would be far, far worse, and that he was granting them the freedom to choose how they died. But Jim Jones never drank the poison. Days later, when help arrived, Jim Jones was found dead, but with a bullet through him.
There will probably be more
It is unclear how he died.
100 bodies that remain at Dover unclaimed. Rhode Island Congressman Edward Beard asked the General Accounting Office to investigate
Hundreds
whether
of
taxpayers
innocent
should have to
bodies
bear that
laid on the
$2
ground.
million.
And the Jonestown Massacre continues to be one of the most unsettling stories of American history. If someone you knew was involved in this tragedy, I give my condolences. But one question still remains. Who killed Jim Jones?